Book 8, The Argument. Adam inquires concerning celestial motions, is doubtfully answered and exhorted to search rather things more worthy of knowledge. Adam assents, and still desirous to detain Raphael, relates to him what he remembered since his own creation, his placing in paradise, his talk with God concerning solitude and fit society, his first meeting and nuptials with Eve, his discourse with the angel thereupon, who, after admonitions repeated, departs. Book 8. The angel ended, and in Adam's ear so charming left his voice, that he awhile thought him still speaking, still stood fixed to hear. Then, as new waked, thus gratefully replied, What thanks sufficient, or what recompense equal have I to render thee, divine historian, who thus largely hast allayed the thirst I had of knowledge, and vouchsafed this friendly condescension to relate things else by me unsearchable. Now heard with wonder, but delight and, as is due, with glory attributed to the high Creator. Something yet of doubt remains, which only thy solution can resolve. When I behold this goodly frame, this world, of heaven and earth consisting, and compute their magnitudes, this earth, a spot, a grain, an atom, with the firmament compared, and all her numbered stars that seem to roll spaces incomprehensible, for such their distance argues, and their swift return diurnal, merely to officiate light round this opacious earth, this punctual spot, one day and night, in all their vast survey, useless besides. Reasoning I oft admire, how nature wise and frugal could commit such disproportions, with superfluous hands so many nobler bodies to create, greater so manifold, to this one use, for aught appears, and on their orbs impose such restless revolution day by day repeated, while the sedentary earth, that better might with far less compass move, served by more noble than herself, attains her end without least motion, and receives as tribute such a sumless journey brought of incorporeal speed her warmth and light, speed to describe whose swiftness number fails. So spake our sire, and by his countenance seemed entering on studious thoughts abstruse, which Eve, perceiving, where she sat retired in sight with lowliness majestic from her seat, and grace that one who saw to wish her stay, rose and went forth among her fruits and flowers to visit how they prospered, bud and bloom, her nursery. They at her coming sprung, and, touched by her fair tendance, gladlier grew. Yet went she not, as not with such discourse delighted, or not capable her ear of what was high. Such pleasure she reserved, Adam relating, she sole auditress. Her husband the relator she preferred before the angel, and of him to ask choose rather. He she knew would intermix grateful digressions, and solve high dispute with conjugal caresses. From his lip not words alone pleased her. Oh, when meet now such pairs in love and mutual honour joined? With goddess-like demeanour forth she went, not unattended, for on her as queen a pomp of winning graces waited still, and from about her shot darts of desire into all eyes to wish her still in sight. And Raphael now to Adam's doubt proposed, benevolent and facile thus replied, To ask or search, I blame thee not. For heaven is as the book of God before thee set, wherein to read his wondrous works, and learn his seasons, hours, or days, or months, or years. This to attain, Whether heaven move or earth imports not, if thou reckon right. The rest from man or angel the great architect did wisely to conceal, and not divulge his secrets to be scanned by them who ought rather admire. Or, if they list, to try conjecture, he his fabric of the heavens hath left to their disputes perhaps to move his laughter at their quaint opinions wide hereafter. When they come to model heaven and calculate the stars, how they will wield the mighty frame, how build, unbuild, contrive to save appearances, how gird the sphere with centric and eccentric scribbled o'er, cycle and epicycle, orb in orb. Already by thy reasoning this I guess, who art to lead thy offspring, and supposest that bodies bright and greater should not serve the less not bright, nor heaven such journeys run, earth sitting still when she alone receives the benefit. Consider first, that great or bright infers not excellence. The earth, though in comparison of heaven so small, nor glistering, may of solid good contain more plenty than the sun that barren shines, whose virtue on itself works no effect but in the fruitful earth. There first received, his beams unactive else their vigour find. Yet not to earth are those bright luminaries officious, but to thee, earth's habitant. And for the heaven's wide circuit, let it speak the Maker's high magnificence, who built so spacious, and his line stretched out so far, that man may know he dwells not in his own, an edifice too large for him to fill, lodged in a small partition, and the rest ordained for uses to his Lord best known. The swiftness of those circles attribute, though numberless, to his omnipotence, that to corporeal substances could add speed almost spiritual. Me thou think'st not slow, who since the morning hour set out from heaven where God resides, and ere midday arrived in Eden, distance inexpressible by numbers that have name. But this I urge, admitting motion in the heavens, to show invalid that which thee to doubt it moved. Not that I so affirm, though so it seem to thee who hast thy dwelling here on earth. God, to remove his ways from human sense, placed heaven from earth so far, that earthly sight, if it presume, might err in things too high, and no advantage gain. What if the sun be sent into the world, and other stars by his attractive virtue and their own, incited, dance about him various rounds? Their wandering course now high, now low, then hid, progressive, retrograde, or standing still, in six thou seest. And what if seventh to these the planet Earth, so steadfast though she seem, insensibly three different motions move, which else to several spheres thou must ascribe, moved contrary with thwart obliquities? Or save the sun his labour, and that swift nocturnal and diurnal rhomb supposed, invisible else above all stars the wheel of day and night, which needs not thy belief, if earth, industrious of herself, fetch day travelling east, and with her part, averse from the sun's beam, meet night, her other part, still luminous by his ray? What if that light, sent from her through the wide transpicuous air to the terrestrial moon, be as a star, enlightening her by day as she by night this earth, reciprocal, if land be there, fields, and inhabitants? Her spots thou seest as clouds, and clouds may rain, and rain produce fruits in her softened soil for some to eat allotted there, and other suns, perhaps, with their attendant moons thou wilt descry, communicating male and female light, which two great sexes animate the world, stored in each orb, perhaps, with some that live. For such vast room in nature unpossessed by living soul, desert and desolate, only to shine, yet scarce to contribute each orb a glimpse of light, conveyed so far down to this habitable, which returns light back to them, is obvious to dispute. But whether thus these things, or whether not, whether the sun, predominant in heaven, rise on the earth, or earth rise on the sun, He from the east his flaming road begin, or she from west her silent course advance, with inoffensive pace, that spinning sleeps on her soft axle, while she paces even, and bears thee soft with the smooth air along. Solicit not thy thoughts with matters hid. Leave them to God above. Him serve and fear. Of other creatures, as him pleases best, wherever placed let him dispose. Joy thou in what he gives to thee, this paradise, and thy fair Eve. Heaven is for thee too high to know what passes there. Be lowly wise, think only what concerns thee and thy being. Dream not of other worlds, what creatures there live, in what state, condition, or degree. Contented that thus far hath been revealed not of earth only, but of highest heaven. To whom thus Adam, cleared of doubt, replied, How fully hast thou satisfied me, pure intelligence of heaven, angel serene, and, freed from intricacies, taught to live the easiest way, nor with perplexing thoughts to interrupt the sweet of life, from which God hath bid dwell far off all anxious cares, and not molest us, unless we ourselves seek them with wandering thoughts and notions vain. But apt the mind or fancy is to rove unchecked, and of her roving is no end, till warned or by experience taught she learn that not to know at large of things remote from use, obscure and subtle, but to know that which before us lies in daily life is the prime wisdom. What is more is fume or emptiness or fond impertinence, and renders us in things that most concern unpractised, unprepared, and still to seek. Therefore from this high pitch let us descend a lower flight, and speak of things at hand useful, whence haply mention may arise of something not unseasonable to ask, by sufferance and thy wonted favour deigned. Thee I have heard relating what was done ere my remembrance. Now hear me relate my story, which perhaps thou hast not heard. And day is not yet spent. Till then thou seest how subtly to detain thee I devise, inviting thee to hear while I relate. Fond, were it not in hope of thy reply, for while I sit with thee I seem in heaven, and sweeter thy discourses to my ear than fruits of palm tree pleasantest to thirst and hunger both, from labour at the hour of sweet repast. They satiate, and soon fill, though pleasant, but thy words, with grace divine imbued, bring to their sweetness no satiety. To whom thus Raphael answered, heavenly meek, Nor are thy lips ungraceful, sire of men, nor tongue ineloquent. For God on thee abundantly his gifts hath also poured, inward and outward both, his image fair. Speaking or mute, all comeliness and grace attends thee, and each word, each motion forms. Nor less think we in heaven of thee on earth than of our fellow servant, and inquire gladly into the ways of God with man. For God, we see, hath honoured thee, and set on man his equal love. Say therefore on. For I that day was absent, as befell, bound on a voyage uncouth and obscure, far on excursion towards the gates of hell, squared in full legion, such command we had, to see that none thence issued forth a spy or enemy, while God was in his work, lest he, incensed at such eruption bold, destruction with creation might have mixed. Not that they durst without his leave attempt, but us he sends upon his high behests for state, as sovereign king, and to inure our prompt obedience. Fast we found, fast shut the dismal gates and barricadoed strong, but long ere our approaching heard within noise other than the sound of dance or song, torment and loud lament and furious rage. Glad we returned up to the coasts of light ere Sabbath evening, so we had in charge. But thy relation now, for I attend, pleased with thy words no less than thou with mine. So spake the godlike power, and thus our sire. For man to tell how human life began is hard, for who himself beginning knew. Desire with thee still longer to converse induced me. As new waked from soundest sleep, soft on the flowery herb I found me laid in balmy sweat, which with his beams the sun soon dried, and on the reeking moisture fed. Straight toward heaven my wondering eyes I turned, and gazed awhile the ample sky, till, raised by quick instinctive motion, up I sprung, as thitherward endeavouring, and upright stood on my feet. About me round I saw hill, dale, and shady woods, and sunny plains, and liquid laps of murmuring streams. By these, creatures that lived and moved, and walked or flew. Birds on the branches warbling, all things smiled. With fragrance and with joy my heart o'erflowed. Myself I then perused, and limb by limb surveyed, and sometimes went and sometimes ran with supple joints as lively vigour led. But who I was, or where, or from what cause, knew not. To speak I tried, and forthwith spake. My tongue obeyed, and readily could name whate'er I saw. Thou sun, said I, fair light, and thou enlightened earth, so fresh and gay. Ye hills and dales, ye rivers, woods and plains, and ye that live and move, fair creatures, tell if ye saw how I came thus, how here. Not of myself, by some great Maker then, in goodness and in power preeminent. Tell me, how may I know him, how adore from whom I have that thus I move and live, and feel that I am happier than I know? While thus I called, and strayed I knew not whither, from where I first drew air and first beheld this happy light, when answer none returned, on a green shady bank, profuse of flowers, pensive I sat me down. There gentle sleep first found me, and with soft oppression seized my drowsed sense, untroubled, though I thought I then was passing to my former state insensible, and forthwith to dissolve, when suddenly stood at my head a dream, whose inward apparition gently moved my fancy to believe I yet had being and lived. One came, methought, of shape divine, and said, Thy mansion wants thee, Adam. Rise. First man, of men innumerable, ordained, first father, called by thee, I come thy guide, to the garden of bliss, thy seat prepared. So saying, by the hand he took me raised, and over fields and waters, as in air smooth sliding without step, last led me up a woody mountain, whose high top was plain, a circuit wide enclosed with goodliest trees planted, with walks and bowers, that what I saw of earth before scarce pleasant seemed. Each tree, loaden with fairest fruit that hung to the eye tempting, stirred in me sudden appetite to pluck and eat. Whereat I waked and found before mine eyes all real, as the dream had lively shadowed. Here had new begun my wandering, had not he who was my guide up hither from among the trees appeared, presence divine. Rejoicing, but with awe, in adoration at his feet I fell submiss. He reared me, and, whom thou sought'st I am, said mildly. Author of all this thou seest, above or round about thee or beneath. This paradise I give thee, count it thine to till and keep, and of the fruit to eat. Of every tree that in the garden grows, eat freely with glad heart. Fear here no dearth, but of the tree whose operation brings knowledge of good and ill, which I have set the pledge of thy obedience and thy faith, amid the garden by the tree of life, remember what I warn thee. Shun to taste, and shun the bitter consequence. For know, the day thou eat'st thereof, my sole command transgressed, inevitably thou shalt die. From that day, mortal. And this happy state shalt lose, expelled from hence into a world of woe and sorrow." Sternly he pronounced the rigid interdiction, which resounds yet dreadful in mine ear, though in my choice not to incur. But soon his clear aspect returned, and gracious purpose thus renewed: "Not only these fair bounds, but all the earth to thee and to thy race I give, as lords possess it, and all things that therein live, or live in sea or air, beast, fish, and fowl. In sign whereof each bird and beast behold after their kinds, I bring them to receive from thee their names, and pay thee fealty with low subjection. Understand the same of fish within their watery residence, not hither summoned, since they cannot change their element, to draw the thinner air." As thus he spake, each bird and beast, behold, approaching two and two. These cowering low with blandishment, each bird stooped on his wing. I named them as they passed, and understood their nature. With such knowledge God endued my sudden apprehension. But in these I found not what methought I wanted still, and to the heavenly vision thus presumed, "O, by what name, for thou above all these, above mankind, or aught than mankind higher, surpassest far my naming, how may I adore thee, author of this universe, and all this good to man, for whose well-being so amply, and with hands so liberal, thou hast provided all things? But with me I see not who partakes. In solitude, what happiness, who can enjoy alone, or, all enjoying, what contentment find?" Thus I, presumptuous, and the vision bright, as with a smile more brightened, thus replied: "What call'st thou solitude? Is not the earth with various living creatures, and the air replenished, and all these at thy command to come and play before thee? Knowest thou not their language and their ways? They also know, and reason not contemptibly. With these find pastime and bear rule, thy realm is large." So spake the universal Lord, and seemed so ordering. I, with leave of speech, implored, and humble deprecation, thus replied: "Let not my words offend thee, heavenly power. My Maker be propitious while I speak. Hast thou not made me here thy substitute, and these inferior far beneath me set? Among unequals, what society can sort, what harmony or true delight, which must be mutual, in proportion due given and received, but in disparity, the one intense, the other still remiss, cannot well suit with either, but soon prove tedious alike? Of fellowship I speak, such as I seek, fit to participate all rational delight, wherein the brute cannot be human consort. They rejoice each with their kind, lion with lioness, so fitly them in pairs thou hast combined. Much less can bird with beast, or fish with fowl, so well converse, nor with the ox the ape. Worse then can man with beast, and least of all." Whereto the Almighty answered, not displeased: "A nice and subtle happiness, I see, thou to thyself proposest in the choice of thy associates, Adam, and wilt taste no pleasure, though in pleasure solitary. What thinkest thou then of me, and this my state? Seem I to thee sufficiently possessed of happiness, or not, who am alone from all eternity? For none I know second to me, or like, equal much less. How have I then with whom to hold converse, save with the creatures which I made, and those to me inferior, infinite descents beneath what other creatures are to thee?" He ceased. I lowly answered: "To attain the height and depth of thy eternal ways, all human thoughts come short, supreme of things. Thou in thyself art perfect, and in thee is no deficience found. Not so is man, but in degree, the cause of his desire by conversation with his like, to help or solace his defects. No need that thou shouldst propagate already infinite. and through all numbers absolute, though one. But man by number is to manifest his single imperfection and beget like of his like, his image multiplied, in unity defective, which requires collateral love and dearest amity. Thou, in thy secrecy, although alone, best with thyself accompanied, seek'st not social communication, yet so pleased, canst raise thy creature to what height thou wilt of union or communion deified. I, by conversing, cannot these erect from prone, nor in their ways complacence find. Thus I emboldened spake, and freedom used permissive, and acceptance found, which gained this answer from the gracious voice divine. Thus far to try thee, Adam, I was pleased, and find thee knowing, not of beasts alone which thou hast rightly named, but of thyself, expressing well the spirit within thee free, my image not imparted to the brute, whose fellowship, therefore unmeet for thee, good reason was thou freely shouldst dislike, and be so minded still. I, ere thou spakest, knew it not good for man to be alone, and no such company as then thou sawest intended for thee, for trial only brought, to see how thou couldst judge of fit and meet. What next I bring shall please thee, be assured. Thy likeness, thy fit help, thy other self, thy wish exactly to thy heart's desire. He ended, or I heard no more, for now my earthly, by his heavenly overpowered, which it had long stood under, strained to the height in that celestial colloquy sublime, as with an object that excels the sense, dazzled and spent, sunk down, and sought repair of sleep, which instantly fell on me, called by nature as in aid, and closed mine eyes. Mine eyes he closed, but open left the cell of fancy, my internal sight, by which, abstract as in a trance, methought I saw, though sleeping where I lay, and saw the shape still glorious before whom awake I stood, who, stooping, opened my left side, and took from thence a rib, with cordial spirits warm, and life-blood streaming fresh. Wide was the wound, but suddenly with flesh filled up and healed. The rib he formed, and fashioned with his hands. Under his forming hands a creature grew, man-like, but different sex, so lovely fair, that what seemed fair in all the world seemed now mean, or in her summed up, in her contained, and in her looks, which from that time infused sweetness into my heart, unfelt before, and into all things from her air inspired the spirit of love and amorous delight. She disappeared and left me dark. I waked to find her, or forever to deplore her loss and other pleasures all abjure, when, out of hope, behold her, not far off, such as I saw her in my dream, adorned with what all earth or heaven could bestow to make her amiable. On she came, led by her heavenly Maker, though unseen, and guided by his voice, nor uninformed of nuptial sanctity and marriage rites. Grace was in all her steps, heaven in her eye, in every gesture dignity and love. I, overjoyed, could not forbear aloud. This turn hath made amends. Thou hast fulfilled thy words, Creator bounteous and benign, giver of all things fair, but fairest this of all thy gifts, nor enviest. I now see, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, myself before me. Woman is her name, of man extracted. For this cause he shall forego father and mother, and to his wife adhere, and they shall be one flesh, one heart, one soul. She heard me thus, and though divinely brought, yet innocence and virgin modesty, her virtue and the conscience of her worth, that would be wooed, and not unsought be won, not obvious, not obtrusive, but retired, the more desirable. Or to say all, nature herself, though pure of sinful thought, wrought in her so, that seeing me she turned. I followed her, she what was honour knew, and with obsequious majesty approved my pleaded reason. To the nuptial bower I led her blushing like the morn. All heaven and happy constellations on that hour shed their selectest influence. The earth gave sign of gratulation, and each hill, joyous the birds, fresh gales and gentle airs whispered it to the woods, and from their wings flung rose, flung odours from the spicy shrub, disporting, till the amorous bird of night sung spousal and bid haste the evening star on his hilltop to light the bridal lamp. Thus have I told thee all my state, and brought my story to the sum of earthly bliss which I enjoy, and must confess to find in all things else delight indeed, but such as, used or not, works in the mind no change, no vehement desire. These delicacies, I mean of taste, sight, smell, herbs, fruit and flowers, walks, and the melody of birds. But here, far otherwise, transported I behold, transported touch. Here, passion first I felt, commotion strange. In all enjoyments else superior and unmoved, here only, weak against the charm of beauty's powerful glance. Or nature failed in me, and left some part not proof enough such object to sustain, or from my side subducting took perhaps more than enough, at least on her bestowed too much of ornament, in outward show elaborate, of inward less exact. For well I understand, in the prime end of nature, her the inferior, in the mind and inward faculties which most excel, in outward also her resembling less his image who made both, and less expressing the character of that dominion given o'er other creatures. Yet, when I approach her loveliness, so absolute she seems, and in herself complete, so well to know her own, that what she wills to do or say seems wisest, virtuousest, discreetest, best. All higher knowledge in her presence falls degraded. Wisdom, in discourse with her, loses discountenanced and like folly shows. Authority and reason on her wait, as one intended first, not after made occasionally. And to consummate all, greatness of mind and nobleness their seat build in her loveliest, and create an awe about her as a guard angelic placed. To whom the angel, with contracted brow, accuse not nature, she hath done her part. Do thou but thine, and be not diffident of wisdom. She deserts thee not, if thou dismiss not her when most thou needst her nigh, by attributing overmuch to things less excellent, as thou thyself perceivest. For what admirest thou? What transports thee so? An outside? Fair, no doubt, and worthy well thy cherishing, thy honouring and thy love, not thy subjection. Weigh with her thyself, then value. Oft times nothing profits more than self-esteem grounded on just and right well managed. Of that skill, the more thou knowest, the more she will acknowledge thee her head, and to realities yield all her shows. Made so, adorn for thy delight the more, so awful that with honour thou mayst love thy mate, who sees when thou art seen least wise. But if the sense of touch, whereby mankind is propagated, seem such dear delight beyond all other, think the same vouchsafed to cattle, and each beast, which would not be to them made common and divulged if aught therein enjoyed were worthy to subdue the soul of man, or passion in him move. What higher in her society thou find'st attractive, human, rational, love still. In loving thou dost well, in passion not, wherein true love consists not. Love refines the thoughts, and heart enlarges, hath his seat in reason, and is judicious, is the scale by which to heavenly love thou mayst ascend, not sunk in carnal pleasure, for which cause among the beasts no mate for thee was found. To whom thus half abashed, Adam replied, Neither her outside formed so fair, nor aught in procreation common to all kinds, though higher of the genial bed by far, and with mysterious reverence I deem, so much delights me, as those graceful acts, those thousand decencies that daily flow from all her words and actions mixed with love and sweet compliance, which declare unfeigned union of mind, or in us both one soul. Harmony to behold in wedded pair more grateful than harmonious sound to the ear. Yet these subject not. I to thee disclose what inward thence I feel, not therefore foiled who meet with various objects from the sense variously representing, yet still free, approve the best, and follow what I approve. To love thou blamest me not, for love thou sayest leads up to heaven, is both the way and guide. Bear with me then, if lawful what I ask. Love not the heavenly spirits, and how their love express they? By looks only, or do they mix irradiance, virtual, or immediate touch? To whom the angel, with a smile that glowed celestial rosy red, love's proper hue, answered, Let it suffice thee that thou know'st us happy, and without love no happiness. Whatever pure thou in the body enjoyest, and pure thou wert created, we enjoy in eminence, and obstacle find none of membrane, joint, or limb, exclusive bars, easier than air with air, if spirits embrace. Total they mix, union of pure with pure desiring, nor restrained conveyance need, as flesh to mix with flesh, or soul with soul. But I can now no more. The parting sun beyond the earth's green cape and verdant isles Hesperian sets, my signal to depart. Be strong, live happy, and love, but first of all him, whom to love is to obey, and keep his great command. Take heed lest passion sway thy judgment to do aught which else free will would not admit. Thine and of all thy sons the weal or woe in thee is placed. Beware, I in thy persevering shall rejoice, and all the blessed. Stand fast, to stand or fall, free in thine own arbitrament it lies. Perfect within, no outward aid require, and all temptation to transgress repel. So saying, he arose, whom Adam thus followed with benediction. Since to part, go, heavenly guest, ethereal messenger, sent from whose sovereign goodness I adore. Gentle to me, and affable hath been thy condescension, and shall be honoured ever with grateful memory. Thou to mankind be good and friendly still, and oft return. So parted they, the angel up to heaven, from the thick shade, and Adam to his bower. Book 9, The Argument. Satan, having compassed the earth, with meditated guile returns as a mist by night into paradise, enters into the serpent sleeping. Adam and Eve in the morning go forth to their labours, which Eve proposes to divide in several places, each labouring apart. Adam consents not, alleging the danger lest that enemy of whom they were forewarned should attempt her found alone. Eve, loath to be thought not circumspect or firm enough, urges her going apart, the rather desirous to make trial of her strength. Adam at last yields. The serpent finds her alone, his subtle approach, first gazing, then speaking, with much flattery extolling Eve above all other creatures. Eve, wondering to hear the serpent speak, asks how he attained to human speech, and such understanding not till now. The serpent answers that by tasting of a certain tree in the garden he attained both to speech and reason, till then void of both. Eve requires him to bring her to that tree, and finds it to be the tree of knowledge forbidden. The serpent, now grown bolder, with many wiles and arguments, induces her at length to eat. She, pleased with the taste, deliberates a while whether to impart thereof to Adam or not, at last brings him of the fruit, relates what persuaded her to eat thereof. Adam, at first amazed, but perceiving her lost, resolves, through vehemence of love, to perish with her, and extenuating the trespass, eats also of the fruit. The effects thereof in them both. They seek to cover their nakedness, then fall to variance and accusation of one another. Book 9. No more of talk where God or angel guessed with man as with his friend, familiar used, to sit indulgent and with him partake rural repast, permitting him the while venial discourse unblamed. I now must change those notes to tragic, foul distrust, and breach disloyal on the part of man, revolt and disobedience. On the part of heaven, now alienated, distance and distaste, anger and just rebuke and judgment given, that brought into this world a world of woe, sin, and her shadow death, and misery, death's harbinger. Sad task, yet argument not less but more heroic than the wrath of stern Achilles on his foe pursued, thrice fugitive, about Troy wall. Or rage of Turnus for Lavinia disespoused, or Neptune's ire, or Juno's, that so long perplexed the Greek, and Cytherea's son. If answerable style I can obtain of my celestial patroness, who deigns her nightly visitation unimplored, and dictates to me slumbering, or inspires easy my unpremeditated verse, since first this subject for heroic song pleased me, long choosing and beginning late, not sedulous by nature to indite wars, hitherto the only argument heroic deemed, chief mastery to dissect with long and tedious havoc, fabled knights in battles feigned, the better fortitude of patience and heroic martyrdom unsung, or to describe races and games, or tilting furniture, emblazoned shields, impresses quaint, caparisons and steeds, bases and tinsel trappings, gorgeous knights at joust and tournament. Then marshalled feast served up in hall with sewers and seneschals, the skill of artifice or office mean, not that which justly gives heroic name to person or to poem. Me of these, nor skilled nor studious, higher argument remains, sufficient of itself to raise that name, unless an age too late, or cold climate or years, damp my intended wing depressed. And much they may, if all be mine, not hers, who brings it nightly to my ear. The sun was sunk, and after him the star of Hesperus, whose office is to bring twilight upon the earth, short arbiter twixt day and night, and now from end to end night's hemisphere had veiled the horizon round. When Satan, who late fled before the threats of Gabriel out of Eden, now improved in meditated fraud and malice, bent on man's destruction, maugre what might hap of heavier on himself, fearless returned from compassing the earth. Cautious of day, since Uriel, regent of the sun, descried his entrance and forewarned the cherubim that kept their watch. Thence full of anguish driven, the space of 7 continued nights he rode with darkness. Thrice the equinoctial line he circled, 4 times crossed the car of night from pole to pole, traversing each colure. On the 8th returned, and on the coast averse from entrance or cherubic watch, by stealth found unsuspected way. There was a place, now not, though sin, not time, first wrought the change, where Tigris at the foot of paradise into a gulf shot underground, till part rose up a fountain by the tree of life. In with the river sunk, and with it rose Satan, involved in rising mist. Then sought where to lie hid. Sea he had searched, and land from Eden over Pontus and the pool of Myotis, up beyond the river Ob, downward as far Antarctic, and in length west from Orontes to the ocean barred at Darien. Thence to the land where flows Ganges and Indus. Thus the orb he roamed with narrow search, and with inspection deep considered every creature, which of all most opportune might serve his wiles. And found the serpent, subtlest beast of all the field. Him, after long debate, irresolute of thoughts revolved, his final sentence chose fit vessel, fittest imp of fraud, in whom to enter, and his dark suggestions hide from sharpest sight. For in the wily snake, whatever slights, none would suspicious mark, as from his wit and native subtlety proceeding, which in other beasts observed, doubt might beget of diabolic power, active within beyond the sense of brute. Thus he resolved, but first from inward grief his bursting passion into plaints thus poured. More justly seat worthier of gods, as built with second thoughts, reforming what was old. O earth, how like to heaven, if not preferred! For what god, after better, worse would build? Terrestrial heaven, danced round by other heavens that shine, yet bear their bright officious lamps light above light, for thee alone, as seems, in thee concentring all their precious beams of sacred influence. As God in heaven is centre, yet extends to all, so thou, centering, receiv'st from all those orbs. In thee, not in themselves, all their known virtue appears, productive in herb, plant, and nobler birth of creatures, animate with gradual life of growth, sense, reason, all summed up in man. With what delight could I have walked thee round, if I could joy in aught, sweet interchange of hill and valley, rivers, woods, and plains, now land, now sea, and shores with forest crowned, rocks, dens, and caves. But I in none of these find place or refuge, and the more I see pleasures about me, so much more I feel torment within me, as from the hateful siege of contraries. All good to me becomes bane, and in heaven much worse would be my state. But neither here seek I, no, nor in heaven to dwell, unless by mastering heaven supreme. Nor hope to be myself less miserable by what I seek, but others to make such as I, though thereby worse to me redound. For only in destroying I find ease to my relentless thoughts, and, him destroyed, or one to what may work his utter loss, for whom all this was made, all this will soon follow as to him linked in weal or woe. In woe, then, that destruction wide may range, to me shall be the glory sole among the infernal powers, in one day to have marred what he, Almighty, styled 6 nights and days continued making, and who knows how long before had been contriving, though perhaps not longer than since I, in one night, freed from servitude inglorious well nigh half the angelic name, and thinner left the throng of his adorers. He to be avenged and to repair his numbers thus impaired, whether such virtue spent of old now failed more angels to create, if they at least are his created, or, to spite us more, determined to advance into our room a creature formed of earth, and him endow, exalted from so base original with heavenly spoils, our spoils. What he decreed he effected, man he made, and for him built, magnificent this world, and earth his seat, him Lord pronounced, and, oh, indignity, subjected to his service angel wings and flaming ministers to watch and tend their earthly charge. Of these the vigilance I dread, and to elude thus wrapped in mist of midnight vapour glide obscure, and pry in every bush and brake, where hap may find the serpent sleeping, in whose mazy folds to hide me and the dark intent I bring. O foul descent, that I, who erst contended with gods to sit the highest, am now constrained into a beast, and mixed with bestial slime, this essence to incarnate and imbrute that to the height of deity aspired. But what will not ambition and revenge descend to? Who aspires must down as low as high he soared, obnoxious first or last to basest things. Revenge, at first though sweet, bitter ere long, back on itself recoils. Let it, I reck not. So it light, well aimed, since higher I fall short, on him who next provokes my envy, this new favourite of heaven, this man of clay, son of despite, whom, us the more to spite, his maker raised from dust. Spite, then, with spite, is best repaid. So saying, through each thicket, dank or dry, like a black mist low creeping, he held on his midnight search where soonest he might find the serpent. Him fast sleeping soon he found, in labyrinth of many a round self-rolled, his head the midst well stored with subtle wiles, not yet in horrid shade or dismal den, nor nocent yet, but on the grassy herb, fearless, unfeared he slept. In at his mouth the devil entered, and his brutal sense in heart or head possessing, soon inspired with act intelligential. But his sleep disturbed not, waiting close the approach of morn. Now, when a sacred light began to dawn in Eden on the humid flowers that breathed their morning incense, when all things that breathe from the earth's great altar send up silent praise to the Creator, and his nostrils fill with grateful smell, forth came the human pair, and joined their vocal worship to the choir of creatures' wanting voice. That done, partake the season prime for sweetest scents and airs, then commune how that day they best may ply their growing work, for much their work outgrew the hand's dispatch of two gardening so wide. And Eve first to her husband thus began. Adam, well may we labour still to dress this garden, still to tend plant, herb, and flower, our pleasant task enjoined. But till more hands aid us, the work under our labour grows luxurious by restraint. What we by day lop o'ergrown, or prune, or prop, or bind, one night or two with wanton growth derides, tending to wild. Thou therefore now advise, or bear to what my mind first thoughts present. Let us divide our labours. Thou, where choice leads thee, or where most needs, whether to wind the woodbine round this arbour, or direct the clasping ivy where to climb, while I in yonder spring of roses intermixed with myrtle find what to redress till noon. For while so near each other thus all day our task we choose, what wonder if so near looks intervene, and smiles, or object new, casual discourse draw on, which intermits our day's work, brought to little, though begun early, and the hour of supper comes unearned. To whom mild answer Adam thus returned. Soul Eve, associate soul, to me beyond compare, above all living creatures dear. Well hast thou motioned, well thy thoughts employed, how we might best fulfil the work which here God hath assigned us. Nor of me shall pass unpraised, for nothing lovelier can be found in woman than to study household good, and good works in her husband to promote. Yet not so strictly hath our Lord imposed labour, as to debar us when we need refreshment, whether food or talk between, food of the mind, or this sweet intercourse of looks and smiles, for smiles from reason flow, to brute denied, and are of love the food, love not the lowest end of human life. For not to irksome toil, but to delight he made us, and delight to reason joined. These paths and bowers doubt not, but our joint hands will keep from wilderness with ease, as wide as we need walk, till younger hands ere long assist us. But if much converse, perhaps, thee satiate, to short absence I could yield, for solitude sometimes is best society, and short retirement urges sweet return. But other doubt possesses me, lest harm befall thee, severed from me, for thou know'st what hath been warned us, what malicious foe, envying our happiness, and of his own despairing, seeks to work us woe and shame by sly assault, and somewhere nigh at hand watches, no doubt, with greedy hope to find his wish, and best advantage, us asunder. Hopeless to circumvent us joined, where each to other speedy aid might lend at need, whether his first design be to withdraw our fealty from God, or to disturb conjugal love, than which perhaps no bliss enjoyed by us excites his envy more, or this, or worse, leave not the faithful side that gave thee being, still shades thee and protects. The wife, where danger or dishonour lurks, safest and seemliest by her husband stays, who guards her, or with her the worst endures. To whom the virgin majesty of Eve, as one who loves and some unkindness meets, with sweet austere composure thus replied: Offspring of heaven and earth, and all earth's lord, that such an enemy we have who seeks our ruin, both by thee informed I learn, and from the parting angel overheard, as in a shady nook I stood behind, just then returned at shut of evening flowers. But that thou shouldst my firmness therefore doubt, to God or thee, because we have a foe may tempt it, I expected not to hear. His violence thou fearest not, being such as we, not capable of death or pain, can either not receive or can repel. His fraud is then thy fear, which plain infers thy equal fear that my firm faith and love can by his fraud be shaken or seduced. Thoughts which how found they harbour in thy breast, Adam, misthought of her to thee so dear? To whom with healing words Adam replied, Daughter of God and man, immortal Eve, for such thou art, from sin and blame entire, not diffident of thee do I dissuade thy absence from my sight, but to avoid the attempt itself intended by our foe. For he who tempts, though in vain, at least asperses the tempted with dishonour foul, supposed, not incorruptible of faith, not proof against temptation. Thou thyself with scorn and anger wouldst resent the offered wrong, though ineffectual found. Misdeem not then, if such affront I labour to avert from thee alone, which on us both at once the enemy, though bold, will hardly dare, or daring first on me the assault shall light. Nor thou his malice and false guile contemn, subtle he needs must be who could seduce angels. Nor think superfluous others' aid. I, from the influence of thy looks, receive access in every virtue, in thy sight, more wise, more watchful, stronger, if need were, of outward strength. While shame, thou looking on, shame to be overcome or overreached, would utmost vigour raise, and raised unite. Why shouldst not thou like sense within thee feel when I am present, and thy trial choose with me best witness of thy virtue tried? So spake domestic Adam in his care and matrimonial love, but Eve, who thought less attributed to her faith sincere, thus her reply, with accent sweet renewed: If this be our condition, thus to dwell in narrow circuit straitened by a foe, subtle or violent, we not endued single with like defence wherever met, how are we happy, still in fear of harm? But harm precedes not sin, Only our foe, tempting, affronts us with his foul esteem of our integrity. His foul esteem sticks no dishonour on our front, but turns foul on himself. Then wherefore shunned or feared by us, who rather double on again from his surmise proved false, find peace within, favour from heaven, our witness from the event? And what is faith, love, virtue, unassayed, alone, without exterior help sustained? Let us not then suspect our happy state left so imperfect by the Maker wise, as not secure to single or combined. Frail is our happiness if this be so, and Eden were no Eden, thus exposed. To whom thus Adam fervently replied, O woman, best are all things as the will of God ordained them. His creating hand nothing imperfect or deficient left of all that he created, much less man, or aught that might his happy state secure from outward force. Within himself the danger lies, yet lies within his power. Against his will he can receive no harm. But God left free the will, for what obeys reason is free, and reason he made right. But bid her well beware, and still erect, lest by some fair appearing good surprised, she dictate false, and misinform the will to do what God expressly hath forbid. Not then mistrust, but tender love enjoins that I should mind thee oft, and mind thou me. Firm we subsist, yet possible to swerve, since reason not impossibly may meet some specious object by the foe suborned, and fall into deception unaware, not keeping strictest watch, as she was warned. Seek not temptation then, which to avoid were better, and most likely, if from me thou sever not. Trial will come unsought. Wouldst thou approve thy constancy, approve first thy obedience, the other, who can know, not seeing thee attempted, who attest? But, if thou think, trial unsought may find us both securer than thus warned thou seem'st, go, for thy stay, not free, absents thee more. Go, in thy native innocence. Rely on what thou hast of virtue, summon all. For God towards thee hath done his part. Do thine. So spake the patriarch of mankind. But Eve persisted, yet submiss, though last replied. With thy permission, then, and thus forewarned chiefly by what thy own last reasoning words touched only, that our trial, when least sought, may find us both perhaps far less prepared, the willinger I go, nor much expect a foe so proud will first the weaker seek. So bent, the more shall shame him his repulse. Thus saying, from her husband's hand, her hand, soft she withdrew, and like a wood nymph, light, Oread, or Dryad, or of Delia's train, betook her to the groves. But Delia's self in gait surpassed, and goddess-like deport, though not, as she, with bow and quiver armed, but with such gardening tools as art yet rude, guiltless of fire, had formed, or angels brought. To Parles, or Pomona, thus adorned, likest she seemed, Pomona when she fled Vertumnus, or to Ceres in her prime, yet virgin of Proserpina from Jove. Her, long with ardent look, his eye pursued delighted, but desiring more her stay. Oft he to her his charge of quick return repeated, she to him as oft engaged to be returned by noon, amid the bower, and all things in best order to invite noontide repast, or afternoon's repose. O much deceived, much failing, hapless Eve, of thy presumed return, event perverse, Thou never from that hour in paradise foundst either sweet repast or sound repose. Such ambush, hid among sweet flowers and shades, waited with hellish rancour imminent to intercept thy way, or send thee back despoiled of innocence, of faith, of bliss. For now, and since first break of dawn, the fiend, mere serpent in appearance, forth was come, and on his quest, where likeliest he might find the only two of mankind, but in them the whole included race, his purposed prey. In bower and field he sought, where any tuft of grove or garden plot more pleasant lay, their tendance or plantation for delight. By fountain or by shady rivulet he sought them both, but wished his hap might find Eve separate. He wished, but not with hope of what so seldom chanced, when to his wish, beyond his hope, Eve separate he spies, veiled in a cloud of fragrance where she stood, half spied, so thick the roses bushing round about her glowed, oft stooping to support each flower of slender stalk, whose head, though gay, carnation, purple, azure, or specked with gold, hung drooping unsustained. Them she upstays gently with myrtle band, mindless the while herself, though fairest unsupported flower, from her best prop so far, and storm so nigh. Nearer he drew, and many a walk traversed of stateliest covert, cedar, pine, or palm. Then, voluble and bold, now hid, now seen, among thick-woven arborets and flowers embordered on each bank, the hand of Eve. Spot more delicious than those gardens feigned, or of revived Adonis or renowned Alcinous, host of old Laertes' son, or that, not mystic, where the sapient king held dalliance with his fair Egyptian spouse. Much he the place admired, the person more. As one who long in populous city pent, where houses thick and sewers annoy the air, forth issuing on a summer's morn, to breathe among the pleasant villages and farms adjoined, from each thing met, conceives delight. The smell of grain, or tedded grass, or kine, or dairy, each rural sight, each rural sound. If chance, with nymph-like step, fair virgin pass, what pleasing seemed, for her now pleases more, she most, and in her look sums all delight. Such pleasure took the serpent to behold this flowery plat, the sweet recess of Eve thus early, thus alone. Her heavenly form angelic, but more soft and feminine, her graceful innocence, her every air of gesture, or least action, overawed his malice. And with rapine sweet, bereaved his fierceness of the fierce intent it brought. That space, the evil one, abstracted, stood from his own evil, and for the time remained stupidly good, of enmity disarmed, of guile, of hate, of envy, of revenge. But the hot hell that always in him burns, though in mid-heaven, soon ended his delight, and tortures him now more, the more he sees of pleasure not for him ordained. Then soon fierce hate he recollects, and all his thoughts of mischief, gratulating, thus excites. Thoughts, whither have ye led me? With what sweet compulsion thus transported, to forget what hither brought us? Hate, not love, nor hope of paradise, for hell hope here to taste of pleasure, but all pleasure to destroy. Save what is in destroying, other joy to me is lost. Then let me not let pass occasion which now smiles. Behold alone the woman, opportune to all attempts, her husband, for I view far round, not nigh, whose higher intellectual more I shun, and strength, of courage haughty and of limb heroic built, though of terrestrial mould. Foe not informidable, exempt from wound, I not, So much hath hell debased, and pain enfeebled me to what I was in heaven. She, fair, divinely fair, fit love for gods, not terrible, though terror be in love and beauty, not approached by stronger hate, hate stronger under show of love, well feigned. The way which to her ruin now I tend.